First book of the year. I already finished one. It is literally January 1st. However, I'm not going to claim I read the whole thing today. I just finished it today. This Body's Not Big Enough for Both of Us by Edgar Cantero. A friend of mine gave me this for a birthday present, so I've had it for about a month now. And it is delightful. So it's a private eye story about a gangster whose sons are being murdered. And because there's a cop undercover in his organization attempting to use the information he gets there to bring down, like, the entire criminal organization of San Carnal, which is a fake city next to San Francisco. I assume it's fake. I hope it's fake. I'm pretty sure it's fake. Yeah, so they bring in this private eye named A.Z. Kim Rayan, who is a deeply strange individual, and basically the reason this book was interesting. So, like, yeah, so the idea is that A.Z. is actually chimeric conjoined twins. Basically, twins named Adrian and Zoe who share a single body. And, like, that is the premise. Like, it is not a case of split personality. It's not a case of, like, I don't know what else there could be, but, like, conjoined twins, except instead of sharing, like, their legs or whatever, they share their entire body and brain. It is nuts, and I kind of love it. Like, that is a delightful premise, and everyone is always just befuddled by AZ. Like, what is wrong with this person? Why do they act this way? Like, people clock him as either a man or a woman, depending on context, because they can't really tell, and, like, and of course, the twins is kind of the gimmick beyond that, is that Adrian is entirely right-brained? I don't remember which is which, but, you know, kind of the fake science that, like, one half of your brain is all analytical and the other half is all, like, emotion-based. So Adrian is basically if you took, like, Sherlock Holmes from Sherlock to an extreme degree, that's Adrian. He is he is completely unempathetic, he is extremely smart, and he's basically the detective half. And Zoe is hyperactive and kind of, like, very zany and cares about aesthetic more than, like, anything else, really. And is genuinely probably the kind of the crazy one, because she's done things like lit their bed on fire when they were a kid and stuff, and, like, they were kids and stuff. It's like, the pronouns are fun too, because, like, half the time the character is referred to as they, because it is two people, but then, like, Adrian and Zoe are depending on which part of the book you're in, there are parts where each of them manages to kind of knock out the other one and then goes in charge for a while. And it is really a fun, whatever, I could go on, but it's really a fun book. And I'm glad my friend gave it to me, because otherwise I never would have heard of it. Also, it is such a cool cover design. Like, obviously this is not what AZ looks like, but it's a cool representation. And I like the spine is really cool looking too. It's got all these bullet holes and it's got, like, flowers. I was going to say something. Oh, yes. This is not a kid's book. It's not even young adult, I wouldn't think. I think it's just, like, a regular adult book, because there is plenty of stuff in here that I don't think I would ever see in a YA novel. Like, there's no kids involved, except there is quite literally an 11-year-old character who's, like, 11 involved in it, and she's great. But yeah, this was really fun, and you know, it's I'm like starting the year on a high note, right? Like, with a really good book. You know, start the year like you mean to continue it or whatever. So yeah. Hello, and I finished reading The Honourable Schoolboy by John le Carré. So, it had been a while since I'd read something by John le Carré. I think I didn't read anything by him last year. I think. So, yeah, I thought it was time. This book is technically a sequel to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which you've probably heard of because movie. And it's primarily set in Hong Kong. And I kinda didn't get it. Like, okay. Like, everything in his books is always really complicated and kind of obscure, and nobody really sits down and explains everything at any point, which is fine. But, like, I kind of expected it to come together by the end and me to be like, oh, so this is the information they're getting from Nelson, and that they're going to get from Nelson, and like, so this is how it connects to Carla and the money and whatever, and I still kind of don't 100% get it. But there is a third book. I think it's called Smiley's People. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I really like the way he writes. I don't know, it just works for me. And I can just kind of listen to him go on and on about all of these people who are like journalists in Hong Kong, and all they do is kind of hang around this bar, and yeah, it's interesting. So in Tinker Tailor, if you remember, they find out that there is a mole in the higher levels of the circus, which is the British secret intelligence, right? And Smiley figures out who it is, and then the guy, the mole, ends up being killed by the end of the book. I don't actually remember how, but somebody shoots him. And so in this book, it's about kind of some stuff that happens after that, sort of in consequence of not being able to trust, like, all of the different elements of the Secret Service anymore, because they're like, this guy had his fingers and everything, we don't know exactly who to keep around. And then they discover money leading into an account in Hong Kong that nobody has been taking money out of it, but it's connected to Russia, so they're like, holy shit, something is going around here. And I still don't really know what that something was. Sorry, I mean, I'm sure it's just me being kind of dumb, but anyway, it was really good. Like, a lot of it, as these books often are, was about a character, like, who ends up struggling with the different, like, competing priorities of a spy, basically. Like, on the one hand, there's trying to follow through a mission so that they can get this guy who has information so that they can eventually take down this Russian operator. But on the other hand, there's, like, the lives of all of these regular people that will be affected by it, and that people who end up dying or who end up just getting their lives ruined. And, like, all of his books that I've read so far, which I think I've read like 7 or 8 of them, it has a pretty depressing ending, so don't go into this expecting, like, I think at this point Tinker Tailor was the one with the happiest ending of the books of his I read. And I think that's largely just because the person who died was, like, not the protagonist. In so many of his books, it's like, everyone dies at the end, and you're like, Jesus. I mean, obviously George Smiley's not going to die, because he's in a bunch of these books, but he kind of also spends most of his time, like, in London talking to people rather than actually being out there in any kind of danger. But, yeah. I liked the book for all I didn't understand all of it, but that's kind of typical, I think. I really like the sort of picture that he paints with all the different characters and the places and the time. I will say that because this is mostly set in Hong Kong, it is kind of racist, maybe. Probably. I mean, it's from the 70s, it's set in the 70s, and most of the characters are very British. I mean, they're not terrible people. but they are the sort of people who join the British Secret Service. And it's kind of colonial, but it is interesting because it explores, like, all of his books really, most of them at least, seem to explore elements of, like, the post-colonial Britain, both from the perspective of people living in previous colonies, or in the case of Hong Kong, was still a colony at that time, but England had lost most of its other colonies, or English people living in England. And, like, that was one of the things I thought was most interesting about Tinker Tailor, actually, was how sort of the expectations that the mole character had about what Britain's place was in the world, and ultimately, and how that led to his disillusionment with all of us. But anyway, I also really like this cover. Is that not cool? There are no dragons in this book. Super sad. I guess this is supposed to be Smiley since he's wearing glasses. I don't know. I don't think Jerry Westerby, who is, like, the main character of this book, wears glasses, so. Yeah, no, it was really good. There was a lot going on, and I also really like just the way that he sketches characters just in a few sentences, and you're like, I know what this person's deal is so quickly, and it's just done so well. And I would say of his characters that are not, like, the main, like, I liked Jerry Westerby, and I always liked George Smiley. I love Connie Sachs. She is just so much fun. She's the head of sort of the Russia division of the service. A lot of it is paperwork and digging through old files and information and remembering stuff from 20 years ago or whatever. And somehow John le Carré always makes it interesting. I don't know. But I love Connie because she's just, the way she talks is so fun. And she's like this old, drunk, like, arthritis-y old lady who kind of got kicked out prior to Tinker Tailor, but then in that book, George Smiley brought her back because basically it turned out the reason that she'd been kind of shuffled off into retirement was because she has just too much knowledge, and that was a problem for Russia. So they got their mole kind of in there to do something about that. And she's brilliant, and I always love it whenever Connie is on the page. Yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of travel, and there's a section kind of, say, 3/4 of the way through the book where Westerby leaves Hong Kong and is kind of traveling around various parts of Southeast Asia, and to all these different cities, and he's in Cambodia for a while, and there's the war going on, and it's also around the time that America is about to pull out of Vietnam. Well, it's like 5 hours later. The batteries in my camera ran out of juice, so I had to go buy more batteries, and I did a bunch of other stuff too. And I don't remember what I was talking about. But, let's just say I liked the Honourable Schoolboy. I'm glad I read it, and it'll tide me over for a while until I read another John le Carré book at some point, probably later this year. And, that's my conclusion. Yeah. I probably like Tinker Tailor better, but this was sufficiently different that you're like, yeah, I get why he wrote this. I don't know. I have no idea what Smiley's People is about. This one kind of ends with a lot of the old guard getting sort of shuffled off out of the bureau or whatever, out of the circus. And, you know, so maybe the third book is a bit more about some of them banding together with Smiley and trying to accomplish something, like, outside of that structure. I don't know. Whatever. I'll read it at some point, but I think we're good here. I finished Calibans War, the second book of the Expanse series. I really liked it. I think I even liked it more than the first one. I think mainly because there were more politics and more viewpoint characters. Yeah, so I don't know what I was thinking when I talked about Leviathan Wakes. I kind of went on this whole thing where I was like, I'm not really sure how much of a series this is. Well, no, it's just a normal series. It's like, there's nothing weird going on. Like, just literally Holden is a character in this again and whatever. It's normal. So it picks up where the other one left off, pretty much, like maybe a year later, I think, maximum, because Holden says they've been working for the OPA, but, like, yeah, some stuff happens. There was less, like, intense body horror, which I missed, but, you know, it had more of other things, like, yay, politics. And I really liked it. I don't know what else to say. I have a hard time picking my favorite viewpoint. Like, okay, I complained a little bit in the first book about how I felt that Holden and Miller were a little too similar. Kinda, I don't know. But the differences between the characters, like, worked more for me in this book. And, God, who was my favorite? I don't know. It's probably Avasarala, just because, like, I liked all the politics stuff, and just, she was just really funny. She was always just, like, so mad, and always just swearing. I loved all the bits, toward the end where the kid's around, and so she's, like, trying to censor herself and doing a really bad job. Also, like, I felt like I got to know the crew more in this book, too, especially Amos. So maybe it's just prolonged exposure, but I'm more fond of them now than I was at the end of Leviathan Wakes. I'm like, yeah, alright. I want to hang around with all of these people, not just the ones whose heads we were in and who we know better, you know? So it seems obvious to me that Holden is kind of the major character in the series, but I'm curious to see who from this book is going to return in the next one, which I am already dying to read. Like, I finished this last night, and I was like, but I have things I need to read first. So, Abaddon's Gate will be, like, it will be a reward to me for having read other books first, when I get to read it. Also, I have a question. This is rhetorical, but, like, the Wall Street Journal's quote on the front of this is about Leviathan Wakes, and it says, "This is the future the way it was supposed to be." Did they read the book? Like, I get that the future portrayed here seems fairly realistic, but I'm not sure that I want the future to involve giant corporations who murder millions of people and do things that are probably going to bring about the end of the human race. And, like, I mean, I just kind of like to think that we're gonna get better in the future. Even if we, you know, it might be unrealistic, but the future the way it was supposed to be, I mean, that's like Star Trek. Not this shit. I don't want the future to look like this. Alright. I mean, at least they don't even have faster than light. Like, there's no FTL drives. Like, this is, whatever. Okay, I'm gonna stop being stupid. I really, really liked this, and I am definitely pumped to read the rest of the series. Like, after Leviathan Wakes, I already kind of was, but this has cemented it, I think. And I do have a question, though. I do want to watch the TV show, but I'm wondering at what point is it safe for me to start doing that? Because I don't want the show to spoil the books for me, you know? But there's, like, fucking 8 books or something, so I'm not sure. I mean, let's be real, I will have them all read by the end of the year, I'm sure. But, you know, can I start watching the show earlier? I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter. If just to be safe, I could just wait, but yeah, I'm just curious if there's, like, a point that the show has reached that kind of, like, the books have gone beyond, you know. Especially considering the authors, like, are involved in the show, right? So it's likely going to be fairly accurate. So yeah, I don't want to watch the show and have it spoil stuff for me. Yeah, anyway, I mean, boom, there you have it. I really enjoyed this. I liked all the characters, all the new people especially. I liked all the political stuff. One thing I missed, besides the body horror, was, like, the perspective of a Belter character, just because, like, that was one of the things that was interesting in the first book was seeing stuff from Miller's perspective, and in this one the closest you get is Prax, but he kind of has a different sensibility about, like, everything anyway. When then the other three characters are all from, like, Mars and Earth, so. But it seems like the next book might have, let's say, something to assuage that need. Okay, so I managed to spoil myself for how this book was going to end, right? If you've read the book, and if you can remember what the very last sentence is, I happened to accidentally read that sentence before I started the book, because I was trying to figure out how many pages long it was, because there's, like, this extra shit in the back, so I was trying to find the actual last page of, like, the written part, and I was like, oh shit. Just the last sentence, I was like, oh no. So, anyway, I was like, I need to forget that I saw that, but whatever. So I suppose that added a little bit of something to the scenes where Avasarala especially is, like, looking at the data from Venus, like, what is happening there? I'm like, I don't know, but something's fucking happened. Okay. Anyway, I really want to read the third book, what the fuck. But, catch you in the next video clip where I talk about something else, I guess. I just finished reading Dead Presidents by Brady Carlson. It's nonfiction, and it's about U.S. presidents and sort of their legacies, the ways we choose to remember them. But, like, that makes it sound stuffy, and it's not. It's actually a pretty amusing book. And it's just basically about how this guy is really interested in U.S. presidents and in trivia about them. And he wrote a book about all this stuff about, like, their funerals and their graves and their legacies and stuff about their deaths and, like, other weird shit like Hoover Ball, why Zachary Taylor's remains were exhumed, who's buried in Grant's tomb, with interspersed with stories of him visiting some of these grave sites. And I thought it was really fun. Yeah, like, also, I mean, it's from 2016, so we have only acquired one additional dead president since then. So it's still pretty up to date. And I learned a lot of fun random facts, which, you know, I always like to have those, because, I like trivia about U.S. presidents. It's one of my subjects. I had, like when I was in 5th grade, all I read that year was, like, books about presidents. I don't know why. I have a book I bought in middle school. I still have it. And it's entirely about, like, assassinations and assassination attempts on presidents. And it was, like, the one book that I bought through the Scholastic, like, order a book catalog thing that we'd get sometimes. Anyway. Yeah, so this was a fun book. I don't have a ton to say about it, but it was pretty short, and, I don't know, it was fun. Now I want to go to the Museum of Morbid Anatomy in Maryland. Because, first of all, the name. Second of all, they have part of James Garfield's spine. James Garfield was one of 4 presidents who was assassinated. And he talked about that a lot too, but he talked about all the assassinations a bit, but, like, he talked less about the actual assassinations, because, like, if you're reading this book, you probably already know about that, and more about other things relating to them. Like, he talked a lot about the news coverage and how Dallas was going to spend the 50th anniversary. And, I don't know, yeah, and the stuff about Garfield, though, is always interesting because basically he didn't have to die. He got shot, but it didn't have to kill him. It killed him because the doctors were like, oh no, we're going to get that bullet out even though it was unnecessary, and then basically just gave him an infection, and he died after like 3 months of agony. So that's fun. Yeah, so I would say I would totally recommend the book. I liked it a lot, but I don't think it's the one to go with if you don't know a lot about U.S. presidents already. Like, I mean, maybe it would be fine, but it's not exactly a historical overview. It is not going to tell you who all of these guys are. It's kind of like, they're not in any kind of order. Like, he doesn't talk about them chronologically or anything. He talks in each chapter on different subjects and multiple presidents pertaining to that subject, but the order of them is, like, pretty random. So yeah, maybe don't read this if you don't know anything about the U.S. presidents, but even then, maybe do. I don't know. It's a fun book, and there's just a lot of stuff ranging from, like, talking about, like, the Washington Monument and kind of how that took so long to build and to get finished, to talking about there's this reunion every year in Missouri where a bunch of descendants of various presidents get together because, like, they're, like, hanging out. There's a lot of stuff about presidential libraries. I've never been to one, but I mean, once the Obama one opens, like, I'm obviously going to visit that because it's not going to be very far away from where I live. I don't know what you're supposed to do there, but I think in terms, like, because I don't know that much about most of the presidential libraries, apparently, but he talks about a Lyndon Johnson one apparently has a robot Lyndon Johnson, who, like, says stuff and cracks jokes, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm 100% here for that. I also think the Nixon Library, he talks about that one a lot, would be really interesting to visit. It's somewhere in California, though, so I don't know. That's kind of far away. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Fuck, whatever. Anyway. Yeah, that's kind of it. It's fun, and I just sort of found it at the library. Like, didn't know it existed before then, so that's one reason it's really fun to just go to the library and poke around, because you find new things, so yeah. Oh, and an update. Look, I am this far to 7 Pillars of Wisdom. I'm working on it. Ugh.